Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Spiritist Psychology Study Group on Human Beings in Conflict, Challenge for the Conscious Being, where we explore our unconscious to help us enhance our mental health, our spirituality, and our wholeness based on the teachings of Joanna de Angelis. I'm Fabrício Assunção from the Spirit Society of Bournemouth. Here with us tonight is Dr. Anahy Fonseca. This evening, and I will give us a PowerPoint presentation with the main ideas brought by Joanna de Angelis and other authors. We will have time for questions related to our study at the end of Anahy's presentation. I now hand it over to Anahy for her talk on reasons for suffering from the book Plenitude by Joanna de Angelis. Over to you, Anahy.
Thank you, Fabrício. I'll just share the PowerPoint. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You have to allow me to.
Disable now.
Okay. All right. I think we need full screen. Is that okay now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So let's go once more to a journey of self-discovery inspired by the Spirit, Joanna de Angelis. And as Fabrício told us, all of us, this is from the book Plenitude, Chapter 7, Reasons for Suffering, by Joanna de Angelis, psychographed by Divaldo Franco. So, in this wonderful chapter, Joanna says that in the relentless pursuit of pleasure, the individual is often driven to seek out a succession of external sensations, moving from one fleeting experience to the next. This constant shifting of attention, however, fails to address the underlying imbalance within, which generates anxiety and lays the groundwork for profound suffering. Rather than bringing fulfillment, this endless quest for gratification only serves to bewilder the individual, pushing them closer to the brink of despair. So I know all of you in the WhatsApp group and people that are in the WhatsApp group have the text, this beautiful translation by our dear friends Sylvia and Bob, but and that you have already read it previously. But for those who are, accompanying us this year in this study group, I think it's very important to, to pay attention, like almost to meditate in what a light teacher such as Joanna is saying, and bring this book is from 1991, and it's so up to date, right? Because more and more, and it's of course the spirits, the high spirits, the light teachers, they see from above the hill, everything for us, what is supposed to be the future. For them, they are seeing like up in a mountain, I would say, not a hill. Well, maybe some are in a hill and other are up in the mountain. So they can see everything as it happens now, because the time in spiritual dimension, we know that it's different, of course, and it would be different from this material dimension that we are, and from the ego sense of time, because the ego has to relate with this space and time dimension. And of course, light teachers is much higher. And of course, time for them, even if it's kind of near to us in terms of a spiritual dimension, very close to our, many times, to our material dimension, if some of them are very close, trying to help us. But anyway, because of their higher consciousness and higher morals and values such as unconditional love, fraternity, compassion, all of the high spiritual values, they can see what's going on here and where we are heading to. So, like 30 years is nothing in the spiritual dimension. So, it's very up to date. And what is Joanna saying? That this constant shifting of attention, and aren't we now, right now, with a lot of information and technology that even our brains are not kind of prepared to all of this information coming to us every day, all the time. Our mobiles, the computers, and all the social medias, and a lot of information. And so this constant shifting of attention fails to address the underlying imbalance within. Because by this at this point of our study group, we already know that the ego is paying attention to the outside world, even if it's receiving drives, of course, from the body, and also different kind of messages and dynamics, psychodynamic from within, from the complexes, all right? So all of this, the ego has to deal. So many times, and of course, in our days, that all this, as I was telling, all this information and this call for outside attention, what happens is that many times we don't even are connect or even preoccupied with the balance within, maintaining the balance within the mental health, right? And at this point of our study group, we know that the higher self, the dialogue between the higher self, the self, capital S by Jung, okay? So people call sometimes the higher self. So for this balance, what is very important is the ego to be able to pay attention in inner life, and especially in the dialogue between the ego and the higher self and Jung's self, okay? Because Joanna will say that Jung's concept of self is the spirit, okay? So is our higher consciousness. So if we are not paying attention to this higher consciousness that know what we came here to do, know the purpose of the soul, so of course we are not going to keep balanced, mentally balanced many times, right? And of course, this lack of contact with our inner world will generate anxiety. And as Joanna says, it lays the groundwork for profound suffering. So rather than bringing fulfillment, this endless quest for gratification, that's the ego's quest for gratification, only serves to bewilder the individual, pushing them closer to the brink of despair. Unfortunately, for many individuals nowadays, they are on the brink of despair. As a psychiatrist, I can tell you that many individuals are in this position. So let's go on to what Joanna is asking us to pay attention. Living under the constraints imposed by mechanistic systems, individuals are compelled to satisfy externally dictated needs and are often influenced towards superficial distractions. These distractions, stemming from an overactive ego, direct attention towards materialistic ambitions at the expense of more refined and enriching pursuits. Such higher aspirations require self restraint. She's giving us the way out of this position, of this pursuits of materialistic ambitions that take us to the brink of despair. So she's saying such higher aspirations require self restraint, dedicated effort, self sacrifice, and the nurturing of one's inner life, enabling the primacy of spirit over matter. So that's so important, people, because the higher self, young self, our spirit, knows the path, knows what we are supposed and what we plan to do in this incarnation, right? So if we understand at some point, if with self-analysis, self-discovery, as we have been doing during all this almost 3 years now study group, if we in self-analysis identify that I'm too much connected to the pursuit of materialistic ambitions, then is the ego talking, the overactive ego, as Joanna says, and then she's giving the path to out of this position, okay? Self-restraint, dedicated effort, self-sacrifice, and the nurturing of one's inner life, enabling the primacy of spirit over matter. Because tomorrow, maybe we can be called, we never know, to this to the spiritual dimension again, our really the real house of the spirit, right? And then we have to be prepared in a sense, being okay, I've done everything that I needed to do, that I decided to do in this incarnation. I'm okay with my higher consciousness, right? And then, of course, that's the primacy of spirit over matter. The body may be regarded as a temporary vessel for the eternal being, serving as a sanctuary that supports spiritual growth. How beautiful this sentence. So, our body is a temporary vessel for our eternal being, for our spirit, for our soul, serving as a sanctuary that supports spiritual growth. Let's treat well this vessel, right? Its primary purpose is to facilitate the soul's advancement through enlightening experiences in moral, spiritual, and intellectual domains, achieved by the cultivation of virtues. Attention should be directed toward these practices rather than the fleeting sensations arising from its physical nature. Again, she's calling attention to, and she's showing us the way where actually our attention should be directed. Always these practices that helps the ego to mature and to listen better to our higher selves, we could say. Then Joanna says, ascetic or alienating behavior that encourages withdrawal from perceived reality is not applicable in this context, as the focus lies on the interplay between mental and physical life. An individual may relocate without altering their behavior, thereby experiencing both external and internal states. A lack of harmony between these aspects can lead to personal fragmentation, manifesting in neuroses and psychosis that cause considerable distress, Such suffering might be mitigated if individuals pursued a deeper understanding of existential objectives. I think this is so profound, this text, because, for instance, she's giving us, from the spiritual and psychological point of view, the cause of our neurosis and psychosis that cause so much suffering, okay, for those who are, all of us actually. Many times we can experience a neurotic behavior, and that's pretty much still from this state that we are of consciousness, with all the complexes, all the different difficult relationships between family members, inner representations of father and mother, for instance, the difficulty that we have to understand our own psychodynamic, you know. And so all of this, let's go back because I think it's so important. Joanna is saying that we shouldn't withdraw from this reality that we are living. Of course, many people say, oh, this is an illusion. We are in a matrix and all of that. And do a lot of people, I have heard a lot of this, even, a lot of podcasts in English from people from different parts of the world. And then people are pretty much, wow, we are living in a matrix. That's an illusion. There's this concept of, I think, Indian concept of Maya, the illusion. And of course, we can understand all metaphors to understand, so that the ego consciousness think, okay, I'm kind of in a matrix or a video game, and my higher consciousness is outside of this reality. And it's all cool. You can do this kind of metaphors. But for us that we have the spiritist knowledge, we know that this reality is created and chosen by us in this dimension, and in this level of consciousness that we have. So then, of course, it's prepared, let's say, for by all of us, our consciousness and the collective consciousness, guided and helped by like teachers such as Joanna, our mentors. And it's a blessing from the source that we call God. And it's a big school, let's say. Okay, I don't think we are, sorry, I don't think we are yet in a kind of university. We are far from being like in this analogy from like a PhD in the spiritual world. No, no. Maybe we are leaving elementary school to high school, let's say, in terms of spiritual knowledge. But we are growing and we are in a spiritual awakening. And in this level of consciousness, but we cannot forget, and we are going to be seeing this in the end of this presentation, in this PowerPoint, that we are sparkles, let's say, we of the source, and we have the divine flame, let's say, within each of us, our higher self. We were created, we are like the spiritist knowledge says, the spirits tell Allan Kardec, we are, what's the spirit? The intelligent principle of creation, right? It was 19th century, and that was the way that the spirits could tell Allan Kardec, and could come to these times that we are with quantum physics and all of that, to understand better what they were trying to tell us. And by the way, what 2000 years ago and more, Jesus came to like summarize and deepen even many teachings that had been already given to us. Some of them, some he brought for very clearly for the first time to our consciousness, so that kind of, in a sense, awaken us to our own potentials, okay? So we can think at the same time, it's kind of a paradox that our consciousness are kind of leaving elementary school and going to high school, or maybe some of us are leaving high school and going to college in spiritual terms. It's okay. We all evolve in different times and speed, let's say, with different experiences. But the thing is that at the same time, that's the paradox, we have the divine flame within each of us. Our self, our higher self, is the intelligent principle of creation. So we have all the potential. It's like, the seeds that has the whole tree within it. It has not grown yet, but it's there. Okay. So Joanna is saying that our focus should lie in on the interplay here in this dimension between the mental and the physical life, because we are in a learning process, and our bodies are the vessels of the soul of our souls here, right? And an individual may relocate without, we can change the positions, for instance, without altering our behavior, thereby experiencing both external and internal states. A lack of harmony between these aspects of mental and physical, and I can tell you that because as a psychiatrist, as a MD, we know that if we don't keep balance, we have been talking in London in this beautiful congress that Fabricio and all other that were in the organization did in London in September, talking about emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, right? So, our mental state is very important that we try to, to grow, to make, the balance, the mental balance, take care of it, and also our physical balance because they connect these systems, they are in an interplay, as Joanna said. And if one of them are in balance, of course, they are going to affect the other. So many times, our neurotransmitters, our brains are in an imbalance. We have a physiology for different reasons and can affect our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and vice versa, right? Because our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, our mental state can and will alter our physiology, our physical body. So, a lack of harmony between these aspects can lead to personal fragmentation because the ego maybe will not be able to, to support, let's say, and to be able to withstand all the pressure and can undergo a fragmentation. That's the principle of a psychotic breakdown. And many times, if the person, okay, can hold on, but then at least a neurosis can show up, let's say, right? A neurotic behavior, and can cause considerable distress. Such suffering might be mitigated if individuals pursued a deeper understanding of existential objectives. So she's giving us the way out of it. And then she goes on, a logical and clear assessment of genuine needs. Logical and clear assessment of genuine needs offers constructive guidance, contributing to both interpersonal harmony and emotional stability. In contrast, unchecked pursuit of material possessions, here we go again, and entertainment often fails to satisfy and can lead to disappointment for those who engage in such behavior. And I think this is one of the basic causes of, for instance, drug addictions, alcohol abuse, and so on and so forth. Then Joanna says some individuals possess significant wealth, social status, renown, and intellect enable them to obtain desired possessions, travel extensively, and interact with diverse groups. Yet, despite these advantages, they may experience profound feelings of emptiness, boredom, and dissatisfactions, which can lead to considerable distress. And here, another main cause of, for instance, anxiety and diagnostics such as anxiety, different kinds of anxiety and depression. Individuals consistently attribute events and interests to external factors, viewing this as the sources of either suffering or enjoyment, depending on their ability to derive satisfaction from them. Nevertheless, Joanna says, the underlying issue is more profound and relates directly to one's inner life. She's calling attention again to our inner life. In the absence of intrinsic meaning, finding this meaning within, any perceived significance dissipates once objectives are attained. This dynamic often leads to substantial frustration and dissatisfaction that contribute to ongoing suffering. An object or concept attains true value when it consistently embodies a shared meaning for everyone, reflecting their individual needs and aspirations in its pursuit. So, true spiritual value, something that is consistent for everyone, not only for one person. The pursuit of reality and self-discovery should originate from a through introspective examination of authentic life needs, rather than from a focus on external embellishments, material possessions, or circumstances that serve to emphasize the ego. Such distractions can foster boastfulness, arrogance, or alternatively, feelings of hurt, resentment, and fear. Initially, it is essential to cultivate a mindset of tranquility. Meditation, prayers, we know the way, people. Enabling one to navigate all situations without attachment. An externally focused flame may provide illumination, but I think it's so beautiful here, also creates shadows if the flame is always focused on the external. Conversely, a flame emanating from within disperses light uniformly in every direction, eliminating the presence of darkness. That's one of the beautiful sentences by Joanna that I advise you to put on the fridge, try to look every day because wow, how much darkness, how much, how many shadows we still like create. And we need to understand what she says, that when the flame is emanating from within, from our spirit, our higher consciousness, then the light disperses uniformly in every direction, eliminating the presence of darkness. That's so beautiful. Individuals whose mental and physical states are affected by the acquisition or loss of external possessions will inevitably experience ongoing periods of distress, transitioning from one form of discomfort to another without attaining true liberation. Such outcomes cease when a person relinquishes ambition, adopts self denial, and works to overcome personal desires. The act of desiring, characterized by personal longing and attachment, serves as an indicator of potential loss, since possession is viewed as something owed rather than truly owned. This anticipation of loss can activate psychological domains responsible for anxiety, insecurity, and fear, ultimately leading to suffering. So let's pay attention in what we desire, and let's try to talk with our souls, with our higher consciousness, to see if it's a desire from the ego and it's from our inner complex or our, some part of myself that it's still craving for possession, material possessions, and things like that, or if it's a desire from my higher self, from my soul. And that's, of course, then if it is a desire that comes from the soul, there's a purpose and there is meaning, okay, to it. There's a purpose, there is something that I have to do because something will unfold and depends on that. Self-knowledge, Joanna says, facilitates the ability to distinguish between what is essential and non-essential, or valuable and secondary for a fulfilling life. Pursuing expendable achievements can burden one's emotional well being and distract the mind from its primary objectives. Jesus noted that the Son of Man did not have a stone to lay his head on, whereas the birds of the air, serpents, and wild beasts, including ourselves 2,000 years ago, had nests and holes, illustrating his complete detachment from material possessions that often cause tension and restlessness. When a young man expressed his desire to follow him, it was communicated that he lacked one essential requirement: the instruction to sell all his possessions and give to those in need. Despite his assertion of being just and law-abiding, he continued to engage with material pursuits, choosing not to follow him. That's free will, free choice that we have been talking some meetings ago. Liberating oneself from ingrained habits and deeply rooted attachments, known as atavisms, can be a significant challenge. These persistent tendencies shape behavior so fundamentally that they become almost secondary nature or second nature. When burdened by such dependencies, individuals may find it difficult to gain clarity, identify their objectives, or achieve the self-liberation necessary for personal growth. So here Joanna is talking about persistent tendencies that shape our behavior, right? And our atavisms that come from different past lives. They equate peace with the stability provided by available resources, which in turn offer comfort and social standing. This sense of security may lead to concerns about losing these assets at any time due to life's uncertainties or inevitable death, which compels one to relinquish everything. Such circumstances do not always result in liberation, as distress may persist beyond physical existence. And here, just pay attention because I will ask our dear Sylvia to bring an example when we finish the PowerPoint liberation, okay? Example of what? These circumstances that do not our attachments to material possessions and power and all this stuff that the ego search so much sometimes, unfortunately. Joanna says that these circumstances do not always result in liberation, as the stress may persist beyond physical existence. They equate peace with the stability provided by available resources. Oh, sorry, here again. Um, Suffering can be addressed through compassion, meditation, and an awareness of its role in the lives of individuals. It serves as a catalyst for personal development, necessitating re education and functioning as a mechanism within the process of evolution. As individuals exercise discernment and make independent choices, as we have been talking in the last meetings, the purpose of reincarnation is ultimately to overcome suffering. And now, in the end, I bring to you the story of the Chinese farmer. Some of you, or many of you, can have already heard at some point because a philosopher called Alan Watts brought from the east to the west, I think last centuries, the end of last century, the middle. But actually, this story, it's from old China, and it's considered an old Taoist parable, okay? And it's thought to come from the philosopher that we have talked about him some meetings ago, Lao Tzu. So the story goes like that. Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer whose horse ran away. That evening, all of his neighbors came around to commiserate. They said, "We are so sorry to hear your horse has run away. This is most unfortunate." And the farmer said, "Maybe." The next day, the horse came back bringing 7 wild horses with it. And in the evening, everybody came back and said, "Oh, isn't that lucky? What a great turn of events. You now have 8 horses." The farmer again said, "Maybe." The following day, his son tried to break one of the horses, and while riding it, he was thrown and broke his leg. The neighbors then said, "Oh dear, that's too bad." And the farmer responded, "Maybe." The next day, the conscription officers came around to conscript people into the army, and they rejected his son because he had a broken leg. Again, all the neighbors came around and said, "Isn't that great?" Again, he said, "Maybe." So now I'll stop share and let's go to our discussion. This small story is to illustrate what many of the concepts and the ideas that Joanna brings to us, but I will let you people ask before giving some kind of interpretation, and you can give your own interpretation. I don't know if maybe we should ask Sylvia before Sylvia talking about if you could bring the example that you have selected from Chico Xavier and Andrea Luiz books.
Okay. Yes, you asked me to have a look at this. And in the book, in the Mundo Maior, I think is in the higher world. There are some examples of people who, during their life, with time they were incarnated, they were very attached to material goods. They have an example, he had an adopted sister, for instance, one of them had an adopted sister. And the father, when died, said, take care of her because, she was brought up as one of the children anyway. And then he thought, no, he took the money and he left her completely, without anything. And people who put all their energy, they dismiss other people. They have this idea, they are ambitious, they completely connected with wealth, and they think that's the most important thing. So they will go over family, friends, and they will do anything to hold on to to create wealth, but mostly as well to hold on to it. And this is an extremely difficult point because I think, could see it by the text. When we go to the spiritual world, we do not change. We continue to be the same kind of people. And in the chapter 17, 17, 18, and 19, actually, of the book in the Mundo Maior, if anybody like to read it, they give you the examples. André Luiz is taken by his tutor, Calderaro, to these very dark areas with Cipriana, which is a very beautiful spirit. She has a wonderful prayer. And they work with the spirits who are in those deepest caves. They are in the inferior umbral. But he cannot go in, he cannot go with the team of people because he's not yet prepared to face whatever he goes. So he stays there. But she said, why? Because you came here, you have a lesson to learn. And then he started looking at people and what holds them there. And there is a group of people, they come, and this place where they are is very muddy, it's very, marsh and things. And they said this group of people, and they are holding pieces of the mud in their hands, and they hold this to their heart, and they see gold. What they see gold because they only see wealth. But in truth, it was just mud that they kept going to there, hiding it and fighting each other, not to be, let's go away because we're going to be robbed and we have all this wealth. Um, and this is very interesting because it's all based in avarice and greed. They cannot see anything. They blinded to anything else that they have. And actually, is one of the points that's interesting is that Andrea Luiz in the text, he talks about Dante, the Inferno, the Divine Comedy from Dante Alighieri. And it's interesting because he is exactly the fourth circle of hell when he's there with Virgil. And is in this place is where the avaricious and the wasters and the hoarders stay, and where they are is the part of hell, in the circle of hell, where they are punished because they dedicate themselves to to wealth and to destroy anyone that could come on their way and completely keep it for themselves and go through, and there's where they are punished. But the interesting thing as well is that Dante says that area is all muddy, is all marsh, which is exactly what Andrea says. It's so fascinating, this, and that's the part of hell where, the sort of Erebus is those terrible areas of darkness and things. And this where they are punished. But they are punished in a way, they are punished themselves, that despair, that they want to hold on to wealth, and of course they cannot take that, but they catch mad, they catch whatever it is, and they hold on to that as if it's their life dependent on it. They don't change, but it's their own. And in the book itself, actually, is one of the interesting things is that actually when André Luiz meets his grandfather, he's one of the men there. but he was already thinking that maybe that was a dream, so they could reach him. And it's extremely beautiful, this part of the book. You cry a lot. I do anyway, because he meets his grandfather, who absolutely adored him when he was on Earth. Um, but this is a very interesting thing, because I think teaches us not to hold on to things, like wealth. It's only good and wonderful if you can share, if you can pass on to, if you can help. You create a kind of the more you give, the more you get kind of thing, rather than hold on to something that you cannot. And it's very interesting, actually, this kind of quite connection with the Divine Comedy. We know that he probably was absolutely, you can see that Dante was absolutely inspired when he wrote that. And so I think, what, and is what Joanna was saying as well, because money gives you pleasure, gives you a lot of things, but also can bring a lot of loneliness, a lot of despair. And also, I think one point that she made in the text was, even if you have a lot, it comes to a point where the avarice becomes so strong that the fear of losing it is causes the despair. So, it doesn't bring that joy anymore. It's just distraction. And I think that's one of the things that, as you ask, to me, could associate. Maybe other people can bring other things. So, we need to wealth. I mean, we need money to survive. I don't think we are against money. I mean, the gospel according to Spiritism explains this really well. We needed money. We needed to live reasonably well. We needed to have a warm home and everything, but not to transfer it to be the only aim in life. That everything we share helps others, but helps us ultimately. And that's what, I think sharing in and bring the charity without um, charity is everything, is the way to salvation. And the example that Joanna gives, that man, for all intents and purpose, he was a good man. He was honest, but he just couldn't let go. Just that little thing of the money that held him back, isn't it? The way Joanna puts it beautifully. So we need it. We need to live, but not to be the aim of our lives. We have our spirit to consider. So, I leave to anybody to like to make any more points.
Thanks so much, Sylvia. Beautiful example. I was reading the book again, listening to you. Yes, it's wonderful. Fabrizio, please go ahead. Thank you.
When I was reading this text, what really triggers me is that internal conflict about the material and the spiritual, um, and also how we best utilize our free will to make the choice between one and another. And we all in our lives presented with situation where we have to make that choice. For instance, we can go for a job that gives us more money, and therefore we will have to work more hours and perhaps spend less time with our family, or perhaps doing less things spiritually. And for me, when Joanna says that, it really resonates with me, because I think I'm going through that at the moment. Sometimes I question myself about, okay, do I go and do something that will um, allow me to help more people or be more having a more fulfilling job, or do I go to a job that will give me more money? With that money, I can help other people in different ways. And for me, what I'd like to say is, I understand the message really well when Joanna will say about um, choosing wisely our choices. And because some of the choice we made, if it's purely material, they will generate other feelings that will not make us happy, and we will not achieve plenitude through those choices. But for me, being very honest, at the moment, I feel like, okay, but I wish I just could know um, how to actually apply that in a right way. And because as you were saying, we all need money, we all need to pay our mortgage, we all need to pay our bills. And then on the other hand, we also have spiritual needs that we need to spend, maybe sometimes investing in ourselves and self-knowledge, doing charity and work on our spiritual side. But I still find very difficult to find the right balance between those two, and um, what to do when I get across with that dilemma, with that decision. Because I think it's almost I don't know if anyone has heard this before. Do you remember the white wolf and the black wolf? Which one is going to survive? The one who's going to feed the most? And for me, for many, many years, this is a huge dilemma in my head. Which one I need to feed first, or which one I need to feed more? Am I doing too much? Because on the other side, on the other hand, if I do too much of the spiritual, am I neglecting what I'm supposed to be doing here in this reincarnation as well? If I was supposed to be going through loads of things, but I'm using these spiritual things to escape or run away from it, would that be also discompensated? That's why my question.
Yeah, but Fabrizio, I think that's very important that you question because many people have this kind of questions. And I think this kind of questions because we are disconnected to our higher self, to the information that the higher self has, because the ego is so much uh, paying attention to one in this text that we have been studying. She, I don't know if you guys realize, but she uses a lot of, many times the words attention, focus, right? And she and the inner world and the outside world. So I think because we are so much caught, and I think that's what she's calling us to pay attention in the outside world, what people are going to say about me, or what is the this or that person is going to think of this and that, of my behavior, of the things that I have or that I don't have. What should I acquire? What should, my ambitions should be? All these questions that you have been asking yourself, many people in this day, in our days, and we all do go through these different stages, But Joanna, in this, especially in this text, I think she's calling us to pay attention to the inner world because if I go always to decide, and she also uses the many times the word discernment. So only I am able to discern what is good or bad. That's why I wanted to bring the Chinese. That was a synchronicity because this small story appeared to me this week, and we were going to have the meeting today. So the Chinese farmer, what the neighbors, and even the neighbors could be the outside world, the people from the outside. Oh, you're so lucky. Oh, that's a bad luck, right? And I think it's so wonderful the farmer that says maybe to everything. And it remind me of we have been talking some previous minutes ago. Chico Xavier also asks Emmanuel when he was suffering a lot because of family issues to ask the Holy Mother. He asked if Emmanuel could reach her and ask her to give him a message. And the message is pretty much, see how wonderful in different cultures, because this is the archetypes, the paths of God within our psyche, Jung says. So it's an archetype to have patience because it's this life is very complex. We are very complex. If we don't have patience, if we don't try to do as Joanna is saying, to pay attention to the inner world, And to discern what the ego is thinking that it's bad luck could be good luck, because we don't, our consciousness, the ego consciousness has only very limited vision. So because of this limited vision, we don't see the complexity of life. Something that it's bad at some point can be very useful, let's say, for even if it brings us suffering for some time, for the unfolding of events that they have to happen, right? So I don't know, Andres, what do you think about all that? I know you have raised your hand. Just remember that we are recording, okay? We are going
Oh,
to stop recording in a while.
oh
If you
no,
want to,
yeah, I know you're
want,
recording. I know you're recording.
okay.
I heard a lot about the higher self today, which was very pleasing. So there was a lot mentioned: the higher self, the higher self, the higher self. And I had a very interesting situation this week because somebody asked me, it's like, how did I came out of my pain, my depression, my really deep moments, which I had plenty full of it for almost 6.5 years. And it was an unbelievable realization because nobody ever asked me that question, you see. And I actually was able to answer it. I was quite surprised. And
Wow, good.
I don't think I would have been able to answer this question before my 60th birthday. Something really shifted, first of all. And that's now 3 months ago. But the way I answered it, I was quite surprised myself. It was an aha moment. The aha moment was that I realized that uh, whatever I looked on the outside had nothing to do with my depression. Not the death of my husband, not the abuse of my parents, not the loss of a job, none of it had any to do with it. The soul suffered by itself. It did it anyway, probably because I neglected it. Whoever I am neglected it. That was the difference. But it already came this way, probably. So I think the damage or the upset or the deep, deep kind of penance, almost the bleeding of my flesh, as we call it, right? Today we don't have to use, like in the old times where they used the whip and everything, and we really made our flesh bleed. Our mind can make our flesh bleed. Our thoughts can make our flesh bleed. You understand what I mean? When I finally understood that those two things are absolutely separate, you know, I'm wealthy or poor has nothing to do with my suffering. The soul is suffering anyway. So when I separated this, all of a sudden I had a life and I was still able to suffer in a different way. So the pain I felt, I knew had nothing to do with my human condition. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but as
Makes a lot of sense,
yeah,
because I wanted to bring, because of course, synchronicities are when we are in alignment with the inner world and the outside world communicate through emotion, just for people that are listening to us, and through meaning, right? And then we are in alignment. So I wanted with something deep in our lives, some knowledge, spirit and matter, like, are in alignment. So I wanted to bring this Chinese parable to you because it's all about acceptance, patience, and detachment from rigid judgment. And it's a very Taoistic way of seeing life. And I was studying the parable because I don't know if I heard at some point, I had forgotten. And everybody knows, I think, by this point, that the Tao means almost the same for us here in the West, the source of all existence, right? And I think, Andres, listening to you, that when I was studying about that, they gave a very beautiful image that we should be like a river that shapes the land not by resistance, our inner land, like you were talking about, not by resistance, but by persistence and flow. So it has everything to do. The ego has to be mature, and we need time here in this life. So it's a blessing to be here. and to be able to get old, grow old, and all this stuff, because the ego has to be mature to make this alignment with the soul, as you say, right? So it's not that we're going to stop any kind of suffering, because at this point of our learning, as Joanna is saying, we are going to suffer this or that. But is that because through this alignment, right, with this soul energy, we kind of start, our inner balance gets better. Our it's kind of a remembering who we are deep within, and that all this suffering has a purpose, because it's only temporary. Like the earth is going to suffer when the river is going through it, right? And is going to open spaces in the earth. If we are like being like a river that shapes the land, our inner land, it's kind of, if we get this image, brings kind of a suffering, right? Because we're going to be shaping the land, but with persistence and flow, with alignment with the light. So every time that we are in despair and with low energies, lower vibrations, of course we are going to be suffering. But I think light teachers, hi Anne, I think that you are here. Good to be with you again. So light teachers such as Joanna, they are just asking us to remember who we are deep inside. We don't have to suffer so much, right? And there is the way out if we understand who we really are. It's great to hear you, Andres. I totally agree with you. Sylvia, you have raised your hand. Thanks, dear.
So, just very briefly, going to what you were saying about the river and the flow, I think is interesting as well, because going to what, and very much the Taoist kind of message, because the river, when he cannot go through, he go around. He find a way. He does not fight. He goes and changes the path. But sometimes when it's a hard rock or whatever it is that he cannot go through, either he parts or he goes round. And I think this is very interesting, going from what you were saying, because there are things we can cope with, we can resolve, and there are things that we cannot. And I think it's just a question of accepting what we can do and what we cannot do. And we cannot do, we can go around. And we don't have to go, we continue to try to go there and suffering all the time. So it gives an option, doesn't it? I mean, that's how I see it.
Well, I will ask, thank you so much, all of you. And I will ask Fabricio to stop sharing, because we have a therapeutic visualization to do. And I think it was Joanna was asking me to, because it came really, really strong today. Can we stop sharing?
Yeah.
Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
So for those has been listening to us, we will terminate the recording now. Bye for now.